A former casino CEO just went on record with information that could completely change how you approach slot machines. And what he revealed about 5 specific games might be the most valuable gambling intelligence you'll hear all year. This isn't coming from some random floor employee or anonymous insider. This is a man who spent 17 years making decisions about which machines stay on casino floors and which ones get quietly removed. According to his internal performance reports from 2024 and 2025, there are 5 slot machines with verified return to player rates so favorable that casinos have been systematically relocating them to low traffic areas, limiting their availability, or in some cases, removing them from properties entirely. These aren't theoretical numbers or marketing claims, these are documented win rates that showed up in quarterly profitability analyses. The kind of data that gets discussed in executive meetings when casino hold percentages start dropping below acceptable thresholds. And here's what makes this information so urgent. Machine number 1 on this list is so player-friendly that 3 major casino chains discontinued it completely in 2025. And according to the CEO, the remaining locations that still have it are under corporate pressure to phase it out by mid-2026. Now, we're starting with machine number 5, because I want to show you how each of these games gets progressively better for players. If you think a 99% return rate sounds impressive, wait until you hear what machine number 1 pays back. But even this 5th machine, the one we're starting with, gives you hundreds of dollars more per session than the slots most people are playing. And the CEO mentioned this specific game as the entry point for understanding why casinos don't want informed players finding these machines. According to the performance data he reviewed, every single one of these 5 slots showed player session times that were significantly longer than the casino floor average, while the actual money loss per hour was drastically lower. That combination, longer playtime with less casino profit, is exactly what triggers the kind of operational decisions that lead to machines being moved, restricted, or removed. Machine number 5, Mega Joker. This NetEnt game has been around for years, sitting in the classic slot section of casinos that still carry it, and it looks completely unassuming, just a simple fruit machine with basic graphics and straightforward gameplay. But according to the former CEO, this machine's performance data showed something that made casino operators uncomfortable. When played correctly, specifically in what's called super meter mode, Mega Joker returns 99% of money wagered back to players. To put that in perspective, most slot machines you'll find on any casino floor are paying back somewhere between 88 and 92%. This machine is giving back $99 for every $100 that goes through it. And that 7 to 11 point difference might not sound dramatic until you understand what it means in actual dollar terms over the course of a playing session. There's a documented case the CEO specifically mentioned, a story about a retired teacher named Patricia who played Mega Joker exclusively for 18 months at a mid-sized regional casino. Patricia wasn't a professional gambler or advantage player. She was a retiree who visited the casino twice a week, brought $50 each visit, and treated it as her entertainment budget. But here's what made her case noteworthy enough to reach executive awareness. She tracked every single session in a spreadsheet. She recorded her starting balance, her ending balance, how long she played, and over those 18 months of consistent visits, her total documented loss was $380. That's roughly $21 per month for what she calculated as approximately 240 hours of entertainment time. Her daughter was initially skeptical when Patricia showed her the spreadsheet, though maybe her mother was misremembering or fudging the numbers, so she started accompanying her to verify. The numbers were accurate. Patricia had found a slot machine that was essentially charging her less than 10 cents per hour to play. Now, here's where it gets interesting from the casino's perspective. After about 14 months of Patricia's regular play, the casino moved the Mega Joker machine from its original location near the main entrance to a back corner of the property, tucked away in a section most foot traffic never reaches. Patricia noticed immediately and asked a slot attendant why they'd moved it. The attendant didn't have an answer, but according to the CEO, this kind of relocation is a standard operational response. Internal reports showed that players on Mega Joker were staying at the machine longer than typical slot players, which sounds good for the casino until you look at the hold percentage. The casino's profit on that specific machine was running 75% lower than the slot floor average. And when a machine's performance deviates that far from projections, it triggers a review. The way Mega Joker achieves that 99% return requires understanding how the game actually works. And this is where most casual players miss the opportunity entirely. The machine has two modes: a base game that plays like any standard slot, and a super meter mode that activates when you win in the base game. Most players treat the super meter as a bonus round, collect their small win, and go back to the base game. But the certified return to player rate of 99% only applies when you play the super meter mode exclusively, keeping your winnings in that upper mode and continuing to bet from those accumulated credits. Gaming Laboratories International, one of the primary certification bodies for slot machines, published the technical specs showing that base gameplay on Mega Joker returns approximately 95%, which is still above average but not remarkable. The super meter mode, however, when played with maximum coin bet, reaches that 99% threshold. The difference between 95 and 99% over 1,000 spins at $1 per spin is the difference between losing $50 and losing $10. Over the course of Patricia's 18 months and approximately 200 gambling sessions, that mathematical edge meant the difference between losing perhaps $1,500 and losing less than $400. But here's the catch that protects casinos from massive losses on this machine. Optimal super meter play requires discipline that most recreational gamblers don't have. You need to resist the temptation to collect and cash out when you build up credits. You need to maintain the higher bet level that super meter mode requires. And you need a bankroll large enough to weather the inevitable variance, because even at 99% return, short-term losing streaks happen. According to Gaming Commission filings from jurisdictions that require RTP disclosure, these numbers are certified and auditable, but the casinos aren't obligated to explain the optimal strategy to players. They can legally offer a 99% game while knowing that most players won't play it in the way that achieves that return rate. The former CEO explained that Mega Joker became harder to find starting in late 2023. Some properties removed it entirely. Others kept one or two units but moved them to locations with less visibility. A few casinos kept them on the main floor but changed the denomination settings, making the minimum bet $2 or $5 per spin instead of the quarter or 50-cent options that made it accessible to average players. The goal wasn't to eliminate the machine entirely. NetEnt has a strong enough reputation that casinos want to carry their games, but to limit the exposure to players who specifically seek out high-return machines. If you're looking for Mega Joker today, your best chance is in the classic slots section, usually in older-style cabinets rather than the newer video terminals. And if you think 99% return is exceptional, wait until you hear about machine number 4. Machine number 4. Bloodsuckers. This is the vampire-themed NetEnt slot that casinos have quietly begun calling the bonus killer in internal communications. And according to the CEO, this machine was specifically flagged in quarterly performance reviews at multiple properties he oversaw. Bloodsuckers pays back 98%, which is certified by independent testing and published by NetEnt in their technical documentation. But what made this machine particularly problematic for casinos wasn't just the return rate. It was how that high RTP combined with low volatility created an ideal scenario for a specific type of player: the advantage player clearing casino bonus requirements. There's a documented case involving a man named Marcus, a professional advantage player who treated casino promotions like a part-time job. Marcus understood something that most casual gamblers don't consider. When casinos offer sign-up bonuses or reload promotions that require wagering a certain amount before you can withdraw, the game you choose to clear that requirement matters enormously. Most players clear bonuses on whatever game they enjoy, which usually means moderate to high volatility slots with 88 to 92% return rates. Marcus played Bloodsuckers exclusively for bonus clearing, and over a 6-month period in 2024, he meticulously tracked his results across 4 different online casinos and 2 physical casino properties that offered rewards play. His total wagered amount was $85,000. His actual loss from that $85,000 in wagering was $1,200, which represents a 1.4% loss rate. But when you factor in the casino comp points he accumulated and the free play credits he earned through the property's rewards programs, Marcus came out $400 ahead after 6 months of consistent play. Now, before we continue, I want to ask you something. If you're finding this kind of insider information valuable, the specific machines, the actual player cases, the documented math, hit that subscribe button. This data isn't easy to access, and as casinos continue to adjust their floors throughout 2026, I'll be updating you on which properties still have these games and what changes the industry is making. And let me know in the comments, have you played any of these machines? What was your experience compared to typical slots? I've been genuinely surprised by how many people have reached out, saying they tried these games after learning about RTP rates and had completely different sessions than they're used to on standard casino floors. Now, back to bloodsuckers and why this machine created such specific problems for casino operations. The game's 98% return is certified by Gaming Laboratories International, and that rate holds across all denomination levels. But what makes Bloodsuckers different from other high RTP games is the volatility. Profile. The game features a coffin bonus round that triggers relatively frequently and pays moderate amounts. Not huge jackpots, but consistent wins that keep your bankroll stable. This low volatility combined with high return means your money lasts significantly longer compared to typical slots. If you put $100 into an 88% RTP machine with medium-high volatility, you might get anywhere from 150 to 300 spins before that bankroll depletes, depending on bet size and variance. That same $100 on Bloodsuckers, at the recommended 25 to 50 cents per spin, typically delivers somewhere around 600 spins. That's not theoretical math, that's based on player tracking data and session length reports. The CEO explained that casino executives eventually caught on to what players like Marcus were doing. By late 2025, most major casino chains had updated their promotional terms to specifically exclude blood suckers from bonus wagering requirements. Some online casinos went further, either removing the game entirely or making it contribute only 50% toward wagering requirements, meaning you'd have to bet $2 to get credit for $1 of required playthrough. At physical casino properties, the response was more subtle. Bloodsuckers machines were typically positioned near high-hold progressive games, the idea being that players who came in looking for the high RTP game might get distracted by the flashing lights and massive jackpot counters of the games surrounding it. The former CEO admitted this was internally called the gateway game strategy. Keep the player-friendly machine available, but create an environment that encourages migration to more profitable games. And speaking of machines that casinos use strategically, machine number 3 is so player-friendly that some properties actually use it as a loss leader, accepting reduced profit on that specific game to attract a demographic of informed players they hope will eventually spend money on other games. Machine number 3, 1429 Uncharted Seas. This is the Thunder Kick game that the former CEO described as the stealth killer, and when you first see it on a casino floor, you'll understand exactly why that name fits. The machine has this old nautical map theme with muted colors and historical cartography imagery. It looks like something you'd find in a maritime museum, not a modern casino. There's no flashing progressive jackpot counter overhead, no licensed celebrity branding, no bombastic sound effects promising life-changing wins. It sits there quietly in the specialty games section, and most players walk right past it looking for something that feels more exciting, something that advertises itself more aggressively. And that visual boredom, that complete lack of flashy presentation, is exactly why this machine maintains one of the highest return-to-player rates you'll find on any casino floor. According to the CEO, this game pays back more than 98.5%, and the reason it survives in casino environments despite that player-friendly math is precisely because it doesn't attract attention. There's a case the former CEO shared about a professional gambler named Jennifer, who discovered this machine completely by accident. She was at a mid-sized casino property waiting for a poker tournament to start, had about 90 minutes to kill, and sat down at 1429 Uncharted Seas simply because it was the nearest available machine to the poker room entrance. She loaded $200, expecting to burn through some time, playing whatever game happened to be there, with no particular expectations about the experience. 45 minutes later, she glanced at her credit meter and noticed she still had $190. That got her attention. She'd been playing steadily, not paying particularly close attention, just spinning and occasionally hitting modest wins, and her bankroll had barely moved. Most slots would have chewed through $50 to $100 in that time frame, but this unassuming nautical-themed game was performing completely differently than she expected. Jennifer is the kind of player who pays attention to patterns and test theories. So over the next 3 months, she made return visits to that specific casino with the explicit purpose of testing whether her initial experience was an anomaly or if the machine's performance was consistently different. She ran 15 separate sessions, bringing between $100 and $300 each time, and she photographed her starting and ending credit balance for every session. Her total amount wagered across those 15 sessions was $2,800. Her total actual loss was $47. That represents a loss rate of 1.68%, which means the machine was effectively returning more than 98% of her money. She posted her documented results on gambling strategy forums and other advantage. Players began confirming similar experiences. The machine's performance wasn't a fluke or a temporarily lucky variance streak. This was how the game actually played over extended periods. But here's where casino countermeasures come into play. By Jennifer's fourth month of regular visits, the 1429 Uncharted Seas machine had been relocated from the main floor to a high-limit room where the minimum bet was $2 per spin instead of the 10-cent minimum that had been available on the main floor. The CEO confirmed this as standard casino strategy. When a specific machine shows performance data that deviates significantly from floor averages, operations doesn't necessarily remove it, but they make it economically impractical for the low-stakes grinders who exploit the math. A recreational player with a $100 budget can play for hours at 10 cents per spin. That same player at $2 per spin gets roughly 50 spins before their bankroll is gone. And even with a 98.6% return rate, variance over 50 spins can easily wipe out a small bankroll. Jennifer told the CEO in a conversation at an industry conference that she actually felt guilty about how well the machine performed, which is a strange emotional response when you think about the typical casino player relationship. The certified return rate of 98.6% comes from Thunderkick's own published technical documentation, verified by independent testing authorities in multiple regulated jurisdictions. What makes this percentage particularly notable is how it combines with the game's volatility profile and bonus features. The machine has expanding wild symbols that trigger with reasonable frequency, and when they hit, they tend to deliver wins in the range of 20 to 50 times your bet. Most high RTP machines accomplish their favorable math through low volatility with tiny, frequent wins. You spin forever, win small amounts constantly, and your bankroll depletes very slowly. 1429. Uncharted Seas is different. It maintains that high return rate while still offering the possibility of meaningful wins in individual spins. You're not just grinding out endless small returns, you're actually getting periodic wins that feel substantial relative to your bet size. The math breakdown shows why this matters. At $1 per spin over 1,000 spins, your expected loss on 1429 Uncharted Seas is $14. Compare that to a 90% RTP machine where the same 1,000 spins cost you $100. That's 86% less loss over identical playing time. And because the game works at any denomination, you can play quarters or 50-cent bets and maintain that same return percentage. According to the CEO, Thunderkick games were always contentious topics in casino operations meetings because they attract a specific demographic of informed players, people who research RTP rates, who understand volatility profiles, who approach gambling with mathematical awareness rather than pure entertainment mindset. Casinos accept the lower hold percentage on these specific machines because getting those informed players through the door creates opportunities for them to play other, more profitable games. But the placement strategy reveals the ambivalence. 1429 Uncharted Seas is almost never on the main casino floor in high-traffic areas. You'll find it in the alternative games section or the specialty slots area, or tucked into a corner where only players specifically looking for it will find it. Now, if you think 98.6% return is impressive, machine number 2 is where things get genuinely controversial. This next game is so player-friendly that casinos literally began removing it from their floors in the fourth quarter of 2025, and according to the CEO, this wasn't a decision made by individual property managers. This was corporate policy implemented across multiple casino brands simultaneously. This machine was discussed in board meetings, analyzed in profitability reports, and ultimately deemed too favorable to players to justify continued prominent placement. Machine number 2, Jackpot 6000. This is the NetEnt classic fruit machine that became the subject of corporate-level discussions in late 2025. And when the former CEO talks about games that created genuine operational problems, this is the one he mentions first. The machine looks like it belongs in a 1980s casino. Three reels, traditional fruit symbols, mechanical sound effects, completely old-school presentation without any of the video screen theatrics that define modern slot design. And hidden inside that deliberately retro aesthetic is a mathematical profile that casino executives eventually decided they couldn't justify keeping on their floors. According to the CEO, this game was literally discussed in quarterly board meetings at multiple casino chains, with operations directors presenting data showing how Jackpot 6000 was affecting property-wide hold percentages. Some casinos made the decision to keep the machine but limited their entire property to 1 or 2 units maximum. Others removed it entirely. And the reason wasn't that the game was broken or malfunctioning. It was that when played with optimal strategy, Jackpot 6000 returns more than 99% of wagered money back to players. And unlike other high RTP games that require perfect play under pressure, this machine's optimal strategy is relatively straightforward once you understand the supermeter system. The most compelling case study involving this machine comes from a mathematics professor named Dr. Richard Chen, who actually wrote and published an academic research paper analyzing Jackpot 6000's gameplay and return profile. Dr. Chen studies gambling mathematics professionally, and he became interested in what he called theoretical optimal play versus real-world achievable results. Most gambling math exists in a theoretical space where perfect play is assumed, but rarely achieved by actual humans in casino environments. Dr. Chen wanted to test whether a game with published optimal strategy could actually deliver its theoretical return rate when played by a real person under real casino conditions over an extended period. He chose Jackpot 6000 specifically because NetEnt publishes the strategy openly, and the game's design allows for methodical, unhurried decision-making. Over 6 months, he conducted 120 separate playing sessions, bringing a documented $10,000 bankroll that he tracked with the same rigor he'd apply to any academic experiment. Every session was recorded in detail: date, time, starting balance, ending balance, number of spins, bonus triggers, supermeter decisions, everything that could be quantified. The results were striking enough that Dr. Chen submitted them to a peer-reviewed gaming mathematics journal. After 6 months and 120 sessions of strictly following optimal supermeter strategy, his remaining bankroll was $9,340. He'd lost $660 total, which represents a 6.6% loss over the entire 6-month period, or roughly 1.1% per individual session. The published paper included all his methodology, his session-by-session data, and his analysis of where actual results diverged from theoretical expectations. The casino where he conducted this research initially had no idea this documentation was happening. Dr. Chen was just another player on the floor as far as they were concerned. But after his paper published in the journal, which is read by gambling industry professionals and mathematically minded players alike, other people started showing up at that casino specifically to replicate his approach on that specific machine. Within 3 months of the paper's publication, the casino removed the Jackpot 6000 machine from the floor entirely. Dr. Chen went back to play one day and found the machine gone, so he asked a floor manager what had happened to it. The manager declined to provide a specific explanation, just said the casino was updating their game selection. The former CEO confirmed this specific incident was circulated in casino industry newsletters as a cautionary tale about how academic analysis of game mathematics can create player behaviors that affect casino operations. But what made this case particularly significant was the scale of replication. Within 6 months of Dr. Chen's paper becoming known in advantage player communities, more than a dozen casinos had either removed their Jackpot 6000 machines or relocated them to high-limit areas with $5 minimum bets. The CEO explained that this wasn't coordinated action. These were independent decisions made by different casino operators who were all seeing the same pattern in their performance data. Informed players were specifically seeking out this machine, playing it with documented optimal strategy, and achieving return rates that made the game mathematically unprofitable for the casino to offer at accessible denominations. Dr. Chen later said in an interview that he never expected his academic exercise to actually impact casino operations across multiple properties and chains. But the research demonstrated something casino operators already suspected. When players have access to published optimal strategy and the discipline to follow it consistently, certain games become liability rather than revenue generators. The technical specifications of Jackpot 6000 show a return to player range between 95 and 99%, depending on how the game is played. Base game mode, where you play the standard 3-reel format and collect your wins normally, returns approximately 95%, which is above average but not exceptional. The Super Meter mode, which activates when you win in the base game and allows you to gamble those winnings on a separate meter with different payout structures, is where the mathematics becomes genuinely player-friendly. Using optimal Super Meter strategy, knowing when to continue play on the Super Meter versus when to collect and drop back to base game, pushes the return rate above 99%. NetEnt designed this as a skill-based element where player decisions actually matter, and players who make correct decisions are mathematically rewarded with better long-term returns. The difference between base gameplay and optimal super meter play is $40 to $50 per $1,000 wagered, which over the course of extended sessions accumulates into the kind of performance gap that shows up in casino profitability reports. The challenge is that optimal play isn't intuitive. You need to study the strategy, understand the decision points, and have the bankroll discipline to follow the approach consistently, even during losing streaks. It's methodical rather than entertaining in the traditional sense, more similar to video poker strategy than typical slot play. According to Gaming Commission Gaming, certifications, these RTP figures are verified and published by NetEnt in their technical documentation, so this isn't speculation or rumor. These are the actual certified mathematics of the game. The casino economics that led to removal decisions come down to a simple threshold calculation. When a specific machine's hold percentage drops below a certain level relative to the floor space it occupies and the player traffic it generates, it becomes what the CEO called a mathematical liability. Jackpot 6000 machines were showing hold percentages in some properties that were 70 to 80% below slot floor averages. That deviation triggers operational review, and by 2025, corporate policy at several major casino chains was explicit. Remove the machine entirely or restrict it to high-limit areas where the minimum bet makes it economically impractical for advantage players to grind optimal strategy profitably. As of January 2026, fewer than 30% of casinos that had Jackpot 6000 on their main floors in 2024 still have it in accessible locations. The CEO said this trend will likely continue, and by 2027, the game will probably only be available in jurisdictions with regulatory requirements that mandate certain game availability, or in online casinos where operating costs are different enough that the mathematical profile doesn't create the same operational problems. Which brings us to the number one machine on this list, and this one is still available in most casinos, but according to the former CEO, it represents the single most player-friendly slot machine ever designed and approved for commercial casino environments. And understanding why it still exists despite its remarkable mathematics reveals something important about how casinos actually make decisions about game selection. Machine number 1, Ooga Booga. This is the Playtech slot machine that the former CEO described as the one that got away. And when he explains what that phrase means, you start to understand just how unusual this game's existence really is. Ooga Booga has the highest certified return-to-player rate of any major slot machine available in commercial casinos. And according to the CEO, this machine was approved and deployed before casino operations departments fully understood its real-world performance characteristics. By the time the mathematical reality became clear through actual player data and quarterly performance reports, contractual obligations and regulatory approvals were already in place, and removing the machine entirely would have created complications that casino chains decided weren't worth the operational hassle. So instead, the game still exists, still sits on casino floors and certain properties, but it's being quietly phased out through attrition. When a machine reaches end of service life or requires major maintenance, it's replaced with something else rather than another Ooga Booga unit. The CEO said that in internal communications, this machine was referred to as the $10 million mistake when calculated across industry-wide lost revenue compared to what those floor positions could have generated with standard RTP games. The story that best illustrates this machine's impact involves not a single player, but an entire community of slot enthusiasts who organized around Ooga Booga specifically. In 2023, an online gambling forum discovered the published RTP data for this machine and started discussing whether the certified numbers would hold up under real-world playing conditions with actual money at stake over extended periods. What began as theoretical discussion evolved into coordinated empirical testing. A group of 12 players across 3 different states agreed to participate in what they called the Ooga Booga project. Each participant committed to playing 20 hours on the machine over a 3-month period, using identical strategy, documenting every session with photographs of starting and ending balances, and sharing all data in a private Discord server where the group tracked aggregate results. The combined bankroll these 12 players brought to their testing was $24,000 total. The combined playing time was 240 hours, and when they compiled all the data at the end of 3 months, their total loss across all 12 players was $127. That represents an actual loss rate of 53%, which means the machine was returning more than 99% of wagered money even when played by regular people under normal casino conditions without perfect theoretical play. The group was genuinely shocked that the mathematics worked so precisely in real-world application. These weren't professional advantage players or gambling experts. These were enthusiasts who understood basic probability and wanted to test whether published RTP data reflected actual player experience. They shared their compiled results publicly on the forum, and the post went viral within gambling communities. 3 of the 12 participants had conducted their testing at the same regional casino property, and within 2 weeks of the data being published online, a floor manager approached all 3 of them separately during their visits and politely asked them to consider playing different games. The casino didn't ban them, didn't accuse them of anything improper, just suggested they might enjoy the variety of other games available. According to the CEO, this specific case was presented at a 2024 Gaming Operations Conference as an example of what the industry was calling coordinated advantage play, even though no rules were being broken and no deception was involved. The players were simply finding a legally available game and playing it in the straightforward manner it was designed to be played. But the aggregate effect of multiple informed players, all selecting the same high RTP machine, created exactly the kind of performance anomaly that shows up in casino analytics and triggers operational response. That same casino still has the Ooga Booga machine today, but the minimum bet was changed from 10 cents per spin to $2 per spin, which effectively eliminates the low-stakes grind strategy that made the machine attractive to advantage players with limited bankrolls. The certified return rate of 99.07% comes from Playtech's published technical specifications, verified by the UK Gambling Commission and multiple independent testing laboratories that certify game mathematics for regulated jurisdictions. What makes Ooga Booga different from every other machine we've discussed is the multi-spin hold feature that gives players actual control over outcomes in a way that most slots don't allow. The game shows you 3 rows of symbols simultaneously, and after the initial spin, you can choose to hold specific reels for the next spin, similar to video poker strategy. Most slots are pure chance with 0 player input after you press the button. The outcome is determined by random number generation, and you have no decisions to make. Ooga Booga introduces a skill element where your choices about which reels to hold in which situations directly affect your long-term return rate. Optimal strategy isn't complicated once you learn the basic principles of which symbol combinations to hold and which to release, but it does require concentration and decision-making rather than just mindless spinning. When played with optimal hold strategy, the expected loss is $9.30 per $1,000 wagered. Compare that to an 88% RTP machine where the same $1,000 in wagering costs you $120. That's 92% less loss for identical playing time. And that mathematical difference is what made this machine's performance so notable in casino profitability analyses. The former CEO explained why this machine exists at all, given its player-friendly mathematics. Playtech designed Ooga Booga in the early 2000s when interactive elements in slot design were relatively novel, and the skill-based holding mechanic was seen as an innovation that would attract players who wanted more engagement than traditional slots offered. Casinos approved the game and signed deployment contracts without fully modeling what would happen when mathematically literate players learned optimal strategy and played extended sessions. By the time the real-world performance data accumulated enough to show the problem clearly, contractual obligations were in place, and the game had achieved enough recognition in player communities that removing it entirely would have created public relations issues that casino operators decided weren't worth the negative attention. So the game remains available, but the CEO said it's been effectively neutered through denomination restrictions and placement strategies. The version that appears in most casinos today has minimum bets that make long session grinding impractical for anyone except high bankroll players. And the machines are positioned in locations where casual floor traffic won't accidentally discover them. He called it the $10 million mistake, because when you calculate the difference between what Ooga Booga actually earned for casinos versus what that same floor space would have generated with a 90% RTP game, the cumulative industry-wide loss over the game's lifetime reaches 8 figures. And that figure represents exactly why you're seeing the systematic removal and restriction of high RTP machines accelerating through 2025 and 2026. Understanding where to find these 5 machines requires recognizing that casino floor layouts are strategic decisions, not random arrangements. And according to the former CEO, high-return machines are almost never positioned where foot traffic naturally flows. If you walk into a major casino property and head straight to the main slot floor, where the newest video terminals flash their progressive jackpots and licensed brand names, you won't find Mega Joker or Bloodsuckers or 1429, uncharted seas in those prime positions. These games live in sections labeled classic slots or specialty games, or sometimes just tucked into corners near restrooms or back hallways where only players specifically searching for them will look. The CEO explained this is completely intentional. Casinos aren't trying to hide these machines entirely because regulatory requirements and provider contracts often mandate their availability, but they're also not advertising their locations or making them easy to stumble across accidentally. When you're searching, look for older style cabinets that don't have the modern curved video screens and surround sound systems. The high RTP games we've discussed tend to run on more traditional hardware because they were designed years ago when simplicity was standard. Ask slot attendants specifically for NetEnt or Playtech games by provider name rather than by individual title, and you'll often get directed to a section you wouldn't have found through casual exploration. Some casino websites actually list their game providers in the slots section of their site, which gives you advanced intelligence about whether a property even carries these manufacturers before you make the drive. Regional availability matters significantly. European casinos and UK gambling halls tend to have much better selection of high RTP games than American properties, particularly on the Las Vegas Strip where casino operators have maximum flexibility to choose lower return versions of multi-jurisdictional games. And here's a reality the CEO emphasized repeatedly. Denomination matters more than most players realize. Penny and nickel slots almost never have favorable return rates, regardless of game title or provider. So if you find one of these 5 machines but it's only available in penny denomination, the RTP you're actually getting is probably significantly lower than the certified maximum. Look for quarter and dollar denominations where the published return rates actually apply. Even at 99% return, proper bankroll management remains absolutely critical because short-term variance will still produce losing sessions that can deplete inadequate funding. The mathematical rule the CEO recommended is minimum 100 times your average bet for any single session, which means if you're betting $1 per spin, you need at least $100 available for that visit. That doesn't guarantee you won't lose the entire amount. Variance can absolutely produce worst-case scenarios even on high-return games, but it gives you enough runway to weather typical fluctuation without going broke during a standard negative swing. For Mega Joker and Jackpot 6000, using Super Meter mode correctly isn't optional if you want the published return rate. You need to study the strategy, understand when to collect versus when to continue, and have the discipline to follow optimal play even when intuition tells you to do something different. Strategy cards and charts are available through multiple gambling strategy sites, and treating this like video poker preparation rather than casual slot play is the mindset that separates players who achieve the theoretical return from players who just spin and hope. For Ooga Booga, the hold strategy is straightforward once you learn which symbol combinations to keep, and the game gives you time to think through each decision without pressure. Bloodsuckers and 1429 Uncharted Seas don't require strategic decision-making beyond basic bet sizing. These maintain their high return through base game mathematics rather than player skill. So managing your bet relative to your bankroll is the only real consideration. The CEO stressed repeatedly that these machines are designed for extended play sessions rather than quick hits. So if you're coming to a casino with $200 hoping to turn it into $2,000 in an hour, these are the wrong games for your goal. These machines are about longevity and minimizing loss rate, not about jackpot chasing. Time limits matter as much as loss limits when you're playing high return games, and the CEO recommended setting a maximum session length of 2 to 3 hours regardless of whether you're winning or losing. The mathematical edge works over thousands of spins, but human attention and decision-making quality deteriorate with fatigue. And playing tired means making suboptimal choices that erode the return rate you're trying to capture. Consider stopping when you hit 50 to 100 times your starting bet and profits. Because while the math says you should keep playing forever at 99% return, practical reality includes variance and the fact that casinos notice extended winning sessions and may take steps to limit your future access to these machines. These games are about grinding small positive value over time, not about life-changing scores. And if that slower pace doesn't match your entertainment preferences, these simply aren't the right games for your psychology. One legitimate advantage play strategy the CEO acknowledged is using these machines specifically for clearing casino bonus wagering requirements. Because if you're required to wager $5,000 to unlock a bonus, but you're only expected to lose 1% doing so, that's $50 in cost for whatever value the bonus provides. This is precisely how professional advantage players turn casino promotions into consistent profit, but be aware that most casinos have now updated their terms to exclude high RTP games from bonus play or make them count at reduced rates toward requirements. Always verify the specific terms before assuming a promotional strategy will work. The reality that even a 99% return still means the house has a mathematical edge cannot be overstated. And over sufficient time, you will lose money playing these machines. What these games offer is dramatically extended playing time and minimized loss rate compared to typical slots, which means your entertainment cost per hour is significantly lower. Think of that 1% house edge as the price of admission for the experience rather than as an investment strategy that might generate profit. The CEO's final emphasis was simple. Gambling should never be a financial strategy, regardless of how favorable the mathematics appear. Only gamble with money you've specifically budgeted for, entertainment, and can afford to lose completely without affecting your financial stability. If you're chasing losses or gambling with money earmarked for bills or obligations, these machines won't solve that problem. They'll just slow down the damage. Subscribe for updates throughout 2026 as I track which casinos still have these machines and what changes the industry implements. Let me know in the comments whether you've found these games at your local properties and what your actual experience has been. Next video covers which online casinos offer the best versions of these games with verification of their RTP settings. The former CEO's last message was straightforward. Play smart, understand the actual odds, and find games that give you a fair mathematical shot. These 5 machines represent what slot gaming could be when designed with transparent, player-friendly mathematics. But the window for finding them is closing. Most will be gone or restricted to impractical denominations. Within 18 months, find them while you still can.